Global film culture is a constantly evolving give and take of influence, much like a multi-ethnic, pansexual orgy. Individual countries often want to maintain culturally relevant output, but trends and movements bulldoze geographic barriers. On our Western thrones as kings of entertainment, it's easy to think of Hollywood as being always on the exporting side, but of course we're not immune to influence. In the 60s, New Hollywood rode the French New Wave. Van Damme, Norris, and Seagal only got the longevity of played-out memes because of Bruce Lee and import Shaw Brothers in the 70s. And then in 1980, Empire Strikes Back came out and we rode that ego trip for a decade of all-American blockbusters. But jumping ahead, in 1989, The Killer helped start the Asian action trend, which was reinvigorated with The Matrix in 1999. In 2002, The Ring started the J-horror craze, which has only recently ebbed. But on the two-way street of influence, or at least market share, they got the Vespas, but we got the Hummers. Many countries struggle with Hollywood releases devouring local productions. As much as film in foreign countries can be subsidized to encourage culturally unique output, those with an eye to the box office unsurprisingly turn to populist or American sources for inspiration. Freedom. In extreme cases, this gives us things like Turkish Rambo. It also gives us Shim-hyung. Shim was already a legendary comedian in South Korea when he turned his eye to filmmaking. After a series of self-starring comedies through the 90s, his planned opus was a monster movie remake of 1967's Young Gary. Finally. And here's where his story gets a little odd. Shim thought that he was going to save the Korean film industry with a big-budget blockbuster that would explode onto previously impregnable foreign markets. The thing is, that industry wasn't doing so bad. In 1988, government censorship on film started to relax. In the 90s, Korea was experiencing an economic upswing concurrent with a thriving industry. The Asian financial crisis in 1997 was certainly a blow, but for filmmakers it was tempered by new restrictive laws preventing the overwhelming of theaters by foreign imports. These facts seemed lost on Shim, who forged ahead with his update of Young Gary with universal appeal, which here means mimicking an American movie to 99% capacity and then throwing in some Korean frills. It was released in 1999 and then again in 2001 with updated special effects, which means this was actually better than something. Also, it screened at Cannes. Stateside, it was called Reptilian, and it holds a special place in my heart as it was one of the two movies to originally ingratiate me to watching shit. It was really surreal to read up on its history now because it fits so neatly in with countless shoddy straight-to-video monster movies back then, but it was at the time the most expensive Korean film ever made and, as far as Shim was concerned, the hope of a nation. Unfortunately, someone had beaten him to the punch with a worthwhile movie. Shiri, released the same year, did what he was setting himself up to do, and it did it without Americanized pandering to foreign markets. Quite the opposite, as it was the first major release to seriously address the issue of Korean reunification. So, did Shim learn his lesson? Maybe follow up with something more passionately honest and personal? Nope, he decided that the most expensive Korean movie ever made wasn't nearly expensive enough. Forget Reptilian's record-setting $9 million, he was gunning for $75 million. I mean, that is a Hollywood chunk of change. That is X-Men money. That is Tower Heist money. That is maybe more appropriately Battlefield Earth money. D-War Dragon Wars was announced in 2002, but would take 5 years to make. Once again, Shim took the position of a savior in waiting, insisting that this beastly effort would set fire to international markets and take the world by flying lizard. He's doing anything for you? Only by the time it had come out, the sentiment seemed even more out of touch. Shiri was followed by Joint Security Area, another critically and commercially successful effort, and since then, A Tale of Two Sisters had come along, as well as The Host, and a little something called the Vengeance Trilogy. While Shim brashly declared his intentions to popularize Korean cinema, Park Chan-wook kinda quietly did it for him in the years it took him to produce his Young Gary follow-up, and I've already watched Oldboy more times than I could ever be paid to watch D-War. Finally, in 2007, after 3 years of intensive post-production, D-War was ready to blow everyone's minds, with a surprisingly similar recipe to the one he'd unsuccessfully used on Young Gary. Boom! Massive mysterious disaster site in LA. Spoiler, it was a giant snake, so you'd think someone would have seen it, but the closest we get to a witness is a Native American with well-meaning but unhelpful advice.
Hide all your pretty things! This is the end!
Ethan, a local reporter, shows up and is rudely turned away by officials, who nonetheless leave him to his business. He uses a CSI Miami camera to capture an image of a strange scale in the wreckage. The image of the scale starts a flashback sequence where a young Ethan is monologued at by Jack, an antique dealer in one of the most protracted expository segues in film history. This is the requisite Korean content, a flashback within a flashback, always a good sign, concerning a legendary dragon. Evidently, Young Gary wasn't a silly enough name, so here Imugi is the legendary creature of choice. They try to repeat it so often that it loses all meaning.
Imugi. Imugi? Imugi. 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 Imugi.
But it remains highly silly. Young Ethan patiently listens to this crazy old man he just met ranting through forbidden love, dramatic battles, flying old people, and self-sacrifice. In a nutshell, every 500 years a girl is born with the light of heaven, and if the evil snake gets it, the world is doomed. 15 years later, the appearance of a single scale evidently confirms everything Ethan was told with no additional proof. He is the reincarnation of an ancient warrior sworn to protect this chosen girl. First he has to find her, and since all he knows is her name's Sarah, he enlists his friend Bruce to... Oh, Craig Robinson, how? What did they do?
She has a tattoo on her shoulder, and she's 20 years old. No, she's still 19. I have a strong sense she's still in the city.
Okay, a 19-year-old girl with a tattoo in Los Angeles.
Wait, I don't get it.
You're killing me, man. That describes every 19-year-old girl in L.A.
Oh, I get it. Sarah, meanwhile, is even more troubled by the sight of the giant snake trail. In what will become a running theme, a totally contrived set of circumstances leads Ethan to finding her. Boy, that destiny thing can really ease up the screenwriting pressure. Wordlessly saved from ogling by plot pusher Jack, she goes to a police station where her picture is rudely taken by this guy who then just happens to run into Ethan and Bruce. Throughout all this, the big snake is still in the city, eating elephants and the like, so how exactly has no one seen this thing? It's chowing down at the zoo, not exactly keeping a low profile, and yet this hapless security guard is the only one who reports anything. Sarah is rushed to the hospital after her dragon birthmark starts acting up and put in isolation with a complete dick of a security guard.
Hello? Is anybody there? Hello? 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 Please, you gotta let me out! Is anyone there? Please, open the door!
I'm playing hard to get. But this puts the already taxed screenwriters in a tough spot. How do you get Ethan to her? They got him to the hospital, but now he needs to get to Sarah, and she is in quarantine. Boy, if only someone there were inexplicably on his side. But of course, that would take some kind of awesome doctor.
I'm Dr. Austin. I'm a big fan. I enjoy your work. Any interesting stories here in our hospital?
As a matter of fact, there is.
Dr. Austin to Ward 3. Dr. Austin to Ward 3.
Star-crossed and destiny foretold, Ethan and Sarah's fated first meeting can only be described as a little rapey. The big evil snake shows up at the hospital. Seriously, no one saw this thing. And Ethan, Sarah, and Bruce make a hasty retreat. It turns out Dr. Awesome was actually Jack in disguise. Since there's no reason for him to disguise himself, these appearances become almost self-mocking in the way they propel the plot. They actually have a character who can show up anywhere as anyone and get the heroes to their next goal. After escaping the giant snake, the car is stopped by the leader of Bad Snake's army, forcing a showdown.
Stay away from me!
Oh man, the shield must be his weak point. Shoot it! Things seem pretty hopeless until wham! Thanks, homicidal lady driver. Guess who she is? Oh, hold on, what the hell? What about Bruce?
What about Bruce? Where is he?
I'm sure Bruce is fine.
Seriously? Douchebag. Ethan and Sarah take a romantic walk on the beach. Oh, really now? You guys met like an hour ago, right? Sarah, remember this guy? Ethan, I have to go door to door every time I move McRape face. The script here reads, then they kiss because destiny, maybe have Jack disguised as a beachcomber put a hand on each of their heads and mash their lips together. This whole time there have been shady government dealings trying to identify the giant snake, which comes to a head when a detachment goes in to attack it in, I don't know, this cave? Wow, what are the odds? But the whole dragon army has since risen, and things don't go too well for them.
Yo.
Oh, Bruce, buddy, they don't deserve you. Especially when Ethan demands a helicopter of him and he just obliges straight up. They meet in a cafe and Bruce pulls Ethan aside for what I'm sure will be a stirring and emotional speech.
Gotta get back to the station, broadcast this report. You guys be careful, okay? Ethan, let me talk to you for a minute.
I'll be right back.
Look, you need this now.
I hate those things.
E. Just take it.
Is that racist? Oh, hey Jack, where's your disguise? The snake attacks the restaurant, but it's not clear what its motivation is. Does it want to kill Ethan and Sarah, or is roaring at them pretty comparable? As Ethan and Sarah race to the helicopter, the army invades in force, leading to the action-packed last half hour of the movie, an all-you-can-eat Korean buffet of explosions, flying cars, helicopters, and dragons with a big snake chasing Ethan and Sarah up to the chopper. Too bad you'll be hungry again in an hour.
I need all units to the Liberty Building. We have a major problem developing here.
Code 3. So this was like the third situation they envisioned when they came up with codes. Okay, domestic disturbance, burglary, and the helicopter plan falls through, or down, and in what starts a series of death-defying moments, Ethan and Sarah jump casually to safety. That would totally kill you. Okay, you got him where you want him again, Snake. Now really roar at them, but don't kill them this time. Ethan and Sarah are ushered to safety by government agents, but one of them reveals he has other plans for her. Okay, that would kill you. Speeding away from the city to safety, our heroes forget the relative speed of dragons. Okay, that would kill you. That would kill you. Ethan wakes up from his little bump on the head in South Central. Sarah is at the mercy of the big snake, this guy and his army, and Jack is nowhere to be found. Man, they really wrote themselves into a corner here. Then Ethan's amulet kills all the bad people instantly, except the snake and this guy, but then it kills that guy. As the evil snake clears its throat for another round of pointless roaring, the good snake shows up. The fuck have you been, man? We could have used you like, I don't know, any time back there. The good snake is losing, but Sarah, in her capacity as chosen one, tricks the evil snake into thinking it's going to get her life force, but then she tosses it goodwise. At the point of victory for our heroes, Sarah dies from the self-sacrifice, and Jack disintegrates since the plot's resolved. Ooh, Ethan, buddy, I'm very interested to see how you're planning on getting home from here. You know, wherever the hell this is. I bet it's going to be quite the action-packed Nope. Okay. Just from the clips here, you may get the sense that D-War plays like a sappy, awkward love letter to American blockbusters, and the comparisons can get pretty specific.
The question of whether or not we are alone in the universe.
March to Hell's Deep!
Blockbusters usually get the brunt of our first world guilt, and we're quick to attack the shallow characters and empty spectacle, but from the point of reference D-War provides, it finally gives us a reason to be unanimously proud of them. Sure, they're crass and commercial, but the Western industry has them down to a science. D-War proves they cannot be done on autopilot. It has all the beats of a blockbuster, but none of them work, alone or together. Bombast is cut with intimate character moments in a totally jarring way. Big action set pieces seem to be cobbled together from undirected coverage. Extensive CGI usually forces detailed pre-production, but it seems like they just shot a bunch of stock scenes of pyrotechnics and people falling over and cobbled it together in editing. I've made the comparison to Lord of the Rings, and while Peter Jackson did sometimes use the off-the-cuff shooting method, he always rooted his big battle through the lenses of his characters, while D-Wars take place between stock figures and play out as disjointed little set pieces. In the big climax battle, the main characters are specifically removed from the action. That is a shockingly efficient way to stop us from caring. And even the elements that are classically reviled in blockbusters, like the Shoe-In love story, are taken to a new low. To me, this says something about Shim-hyung, and not that he's Korea's savior. He seems like the kid who the cool kids won't let into their club. He's very nationalist in his publicity, but it really just feels like if he was offered a career in LA, he'd drop Korea in a second. You can't say that D-War represents a real effort to bring uniquely Korean film to a wide market. It was an effort to sell tickets by trying to mimic an American blockbuster. The flashback story we get would make, if not a better movie, at least a more unique one than D-War. The only Korean film it seems to take influence from is Young Gary. And Shim gets crazier. He was taken to court after failing to pay $707,000 to his Korean post-production crew for their work on the film. The proceedings brought to light some other unverified issues, like his shooting employees with BBs and offering to pay them if they could dodge them, or keeping a notebook list of actresses he planned to use as sexual bargaining chips in deals with foreign investors. His response to that allegation was to say, "What kind of idiot would write that down? I'd keep it in my phone." See what I mean? The guy is clearly going out of his way to embody the ultimate Hollywood producer until they let him into their club. Still not convinced? Alright, one more. For his follow-up to D-War, made during his period of financial uncertainty, he cast himself as the main character. In The Last Godfather, a return to the comedy that apparently made him famous in Korea, he plays the inept son of mob boss Don Carini, that's right, Harvey Keitel, who grooms him for induction into succession as the head of the mob in New York. That feeling? That's your mind being blown. Huh. Last Godfather was released on April 1st in North America. Alright, new crazy theory. It represents the culmination of a decade-long practical joke on the American film industry that started with young Gary. It's genius! Jack in Disguises was a comment on lazy narrative technique. Removing the protagonist from the climactic battle was a comment on bland spectacle. Shoehorning foreign plot elements was a comment on disrespectful co-modification. Imugi was a prophetic comment on unobtainium. Ethan means solid and permanent, like the unnervingly monolithic market share of Hollywood overseas. The D in D-War stands for disestablishmentarianism. Whatever, I don't have to convince you. I'll be vindicated when his next movie is an impeccable social criticism of American healthcare.